The following review contains excitement, joy, and other emotions which may be too intense for some audiophiles. Viewer discretion is advised. We're reviewing the Audiolab 6000A Play today, so hit that like button and subscribe, and let's do this! The Audiolab 6000A Play is a stereo integrated amplifier that churns out 50 watts per channel into 8 ohms and 75 watts into 4. This Class AB amp is just full of goodies with analog, digital, and wireless connectivity options. It has a built-in moving magnet phono preamp as well as a pair of preamp outs for use with a separate amplifier or subwoofer. Now, what makes the Play unique among integrated amplifiers is that if you want to add a separate third-party amplifier down the road, you can effectively turn the Play into a dedicated preamp by activating its preamp operational mode. This completely disconnects the power amplifier from the signal chain. And the Play has a pair of coaxial and optical digital inputs which are tied to the built-in Sabre 32 DAC. You can stream music with an Ethernet connection or wirelessly. And speaking of wireless tech, you can stream using Bluetooth or with services like Spotify, Tidal, Amazon Music, Qobuz, and more through the DTS Play-Fi app, which is supported by both Apple and Android devices. And it enables the Play to be part of a whole home audio setup. But if you need more detailed specs than this, please check out our links in the description below. Now, getting up and running is pretty straightforward. We connected a lot of loudspeakers to this amp, ranging from affordable to cost no object. For example, the 6000A Play worked well with our Monitor Audio Bronze 100s on up to the brand new PSB Synchrony T600 towers at $8,000. But our favorite pairings included our Klipsch Heritage loudspeakers, both the Heresy and Forte 4s, as well as the HECO Aurora 700, Dynaudio Evoke 20, the Texas-made High Moon speakers we just reviewed, the Sonos Faber Lumina 2s, and a new pair of open baffle loudspeakers that will be revealed in a later review. In terms of sources, we used 2 different turntables with the Audiolab, the new Project Debut Pro, and my trusty Audio-Technica LP140, which is fitted with the new Ortofon 2M Black Beethoven edition. I also connected the Audiolab to our Sony TV using an optical cable, allowing the Play to be the centerpiece of a 2.1 home theater. I loved this setup. I used our Auralic S50 Pro Plus to test the Play's DAC further, but I ultimately ended up relying very heavily on the DTS Play-Fi app on my iPhone, streaming directly to the Audiolab. The sound quality of the Audiolab when listening to streaming music, either wired or wirelessly, was so good that the source didn't really matter. So about the Audiolab's sound, I had zero expectations going into this review because, to be honest, I knew next to nothing about Audiolab. Happily, I can say that the 6000A Play is insanely impressive. This is an incredibly capable amplifier. While it may only have 50 watts of power at its disposal, the control it has over every loudspeaker we connected to it, I would have swore this amp was way more powerful. The Audiolab, more so than maybe any other amp we've reviewed this year, has been able to slot into the signal chain and make every speaker sound its absolute best without fail. This is an incredibly neutral and resolute amplifier, though it isn't boring like the neutrality of the M33. It has punch and presence that keeps the delivery and just things engaging without altering instruments or vocal timbres. Starting with the bass, the 6000A's control over the speaker's woofers is impressive. Bass is very well dampened, controlled, firm, and textural. In a lot of ways, the bass performance of this smallish integrated reminded me a lot of my old Mark Levinson No. 432 and 433 amplifiers, in that the bass is rich, organic, and full of detail with depth that always just feels right. If you're a fan of rock music, especially bands like Tool, you should definitely put the Audiolab on your list. You will be shocked at how much detail and definition this little amp has down low when playing the hard stuff. Oh, and the Play's low bass chops are on full display at virtually all volumes. In terms of mid-range, again, similar to my old Levinson amps, the Audiolab is neutral but with a hint of body. There isn't a sudden leanness as you transition from the bass performance up into the mid-range, and as a result, instruments and artists retain a truer sense of scale, not to mention dimension because, like with the bass, the Audiolab's mid-range is very detailed. I love this amp. It just nails inflection. I love listening to music through this amp. It just gets in there and resolves the most subtle cues with ease. Case in point, when listening to I Want You from Savage Garden, a song I have listened to 1,000 times, I could quite literally count the vocal stems that were layered one on top of the next throughout the chorus. I heard 5 distinct stems when listening to this track, and when I reached out to Darren to confirm if I was correct, or at least close, he replied, "You're absolutely correct." I'm not sure I've been able to do that with any other amplifier. As for the Audiolab's high frequency performance, it's great. This may be one of the Play's best attributes. It isn't the most extended or forward, making it a great fit for a lot of speakers, especially those with horn-loaded or brighter tweeters, like our Klipsch Heritage speakers or the Sonus Faber Lumina 2s. But don't get me wrong, the Audiolab's treble is still airy and very delicate, but it doesn't allow the speaker's tweeter to glare, so it never becomes fatiguing or forward of the rest of the amplifier's frequency response. Where I feel the Audiolab is in a class all by itself, SOUNDSTAGE. I have heard amps that allow speakers to exhibit a slightly, emphasis on slightly, wider or deeper soundstage, but few that manage to be as composed as the Audiolab. When paired with speakers known to have an ability to cast a pretty impressive soundstage, Dynaudio and HECO, I'm talking about you, the Audiolab didn't rein them in too much and proved to be far more nuanced compared to other amplifiers where things can get a little bit fuzzy at the edges. Between the speakers, forget about it. Like with the mid-range, the Audiolab's ability to resolve detail shines through in its focus and separation. Dynamically, the Play is near perfect for me. While I will admit there is a part of me that likes a little bit more forward dynamic presence from time to time, which explains why I'm such a Krell fan, but when you get right down to it, the 6000A sounds more natural in the way that it builds, starts, and stops. It has seemingly endless control over the source material and your speakers that, if you want to go big, you can. But in doing so, it never loses its grip on the finer details and the cues that go into making a crescendo sound and feel realistic versus flat and two-dimensional. You know, like you just cranked the volume for effect rather than the music building to a climax on its own. Even when playing complex passages at volume, the Audiolab never lost its composure. As impressed as I am with the Play's overall sonic performance, I have to say the built-in DAC is pretty damn good. It gave me Cambridge Audio DAC Magic 200M vibes, though the Audiolab's built-in DAC isn't quite as full-featured as the 200M. Sonically, the two are more than a little comparable, though. I'm also not the world's biggest fan of DTS Play-Fi, though in this instance, I honestly didn't mind it. The integration and communication between the app and the Audiolab was excellent. Lastly, and this may be very important to some of you looking to upgrade components down the line, but the Audiolab as a standalone preamp is awesome. Where I become a little less enthusiastic is with the Phono preamp. It's good, definitely good for a Phono preamp in this class, but like the Phono preamp found inside the ROTEL A11 Tribute, the Audiolab is prone to some noise, specifically ground loop hum. I know this isn't wholly the fault of the amp. Nevertheless, I use the same turntables on every amp we test, not to mention the same outlets, cables, etc. And so far, only the ROTEL and Audiolab have had intermittent noise issues with respect to their phono stages. It is correctable, usually requiring some tweaking, either your cables or plugging the turntable into a different outlet than the amp, but it is worth noting. Also, those of you who like tone controls, not going to find any inside the Audiolab. However, you do get balance control, so there's that. In terms of comparisons, there are more than a few because the do-it-all integrated amp market is just hotter than ever. Before I dive into those, pro tip, if you don't need streaming capabilities, you can pick up the Audiolab 6000A, minus the Play, and save some money. But compared to the slightly cheaper Yamaha AS801, this isn't even a contest in my mind. The Audiolab comes out ahead in every category, save for maybe looks. The Yamaha is hard to beat when it comes to appearances, especially if you prefer a more vintage look. That isn't to say that the 6000A is ugly. I actually like its more mod or Bauhaus style and even prefer it to the Yamaha, but that's just me. While the Audiolab lacks HDMI connectivity, I believe that sonically it is superior to that of the BLUESOUND POWERNODE, possessing just a far more organic sound when compared to the BLUESOUND's Class D architecture. I still love the POWERNODE, but forced me to make a decision, and I'm picking the Audiolab. For those of you wondering how the Play compares to the ROTEL A11 Tribute or Musical Fidelity M3SI, these either lack DACs or music streaming capability, which is why I've left them off the list here. If you don't need those features, these are still great options, but the non-Play Audiolab is going to be as good and just way easier to get. Now, for those of you on a stricter budget, you can have similar features with the Emotiva TA1 and our go-to budget champion, the Cambridge Audio AXR 100. But if you want to know which one I like better, it's the Audiolab. But if you're shopping under $1,000, the Cambridge still cannot be beat. Where the 6000A Play gets really interesting for me is the fact that I think it's hands down better than the far costlier and more powerful NAD M33. When comparing sound quality and feature set, I even prefer the Audiolab to my Musical Fidelity M5SI. Though if you need more than 50 watts of power, the M5SI is going to be more versatile in that regard. In truth, I think I prefer the Audiolab to just about anything I've heard this year, with the exception of the Deckware Zen Canner amps, which really aren't comparable because they have tubes, and of course the Technics R1000 that retails for nearly 10 grand. That's how good I believe the Audiolab to be. What more is there to say other than I think it's pretty obvious that the 6000A Play from Audiolab is incredible. I want to listen to it more than just about anything else we've had in-house. If you know that you can get by with 50 to 75 watts of total power and are looking for a streamlined, easy-to-use solution that sounds beyond fabulous, I would urge you to consider this amp above nearly all others, regardless of price. Yes, I believe the Audiolab is that level of great. So that's it. That is now my review of the Audiolab 6000A Play, but now it's time to find out if Kristi liked it.
Oh, I love it. Everybody can relax. Honestly, I don't have a whole lot to add. I'm really in alignment with how you felt about this particular amplifier. It truly is the unsuck it button of amplifiers. like how the Musical Fidelity M8XI amplifier, which is ridiculously expensive.
Compared to this, yes.
Compared to this.
Yeah.
And how it totally saved the Bowers & Wilkins 702 signature review that we reviewed. Was it last year?
I think so, yeah.
Time has no meaning. This amp absolutely saved the new PSB T600 Synchrony Tower speakers from getting absolutely incinerated in a review. At least from me.
For you,
I would have ripped that speaker to shreds had the Play not come along. Like it saved its life.
It did coax a little bit of personality and fun out of that speaker. I will agree. Now,
That's an understatement. Jesus. That speaker was so boring until this thing came along. And honestly, I think you have to spend a lot more before you start seeing any major levels of improvement.
Oh, absolutely.
What is the diminishing returns or something that people to talk about? This amp, I think is the separation. Yeah. You know, the kind of the starting end point of where this is about what you would spend to get tons of excellence. But before you have to really move up into, for me, I would say definitely the M5SI, which you can't get.
The M5SI or M8?
Well, both.
Oh, okay.
But you really have to go up to the M5 for me before you really start to see more and more performance. But you can't get the M5. It's basically Musical Fidelity has not been available all year. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. They claim my contact at least swears that nothing's going on, that there's nothing's being discontinued, but it still hasn't been available. Right. So I don't know, head tilt to that. Now, obviously the M8 that I, referenced, that's like, what, a $6,000 amplifier? It's
about 5 times more expensive.
Obviously you step up to that and there is a noticeable improvement.
Yeah.
I think also maybe going to the Yamaha AS3200 which is like $7,000,
$7,000,
yes, that's going to give you.
Yes, I agree with you, but you are going to with the M8Xi, you're not losing any functionality because that has built-in DACs and stuff, and it's rather fantastic in that regard. Not to mention it's like 1,000 watts when you really get down to it. But with the 3200, you will be giving up all of the digital connectivity and streaming that the Play has. And so you're going to pay 5-6 times as much to get arguably better sonic performance with the 3200 and even the M8Xi, but you're going to give up functionality getting there, which is,
Yeah, you're right. And yes, I was going to say that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I already know the question that everybody is going to ask, and they're going to want to know, how does this compare to our beloved name Unity Atom? Now, the difference here is, and I'm sure the reason why you didn't mention it is because the name has HDMI capabilities, where this doesn't. But because you mentioned the POWERNODE, I think it's worth bringing up. And I know people are going to ask, so just put them out of their misery.
You're not wrong in asking. It's not included on this list because, like the Cambridge Audio Evo, 150 and even 75, like the name and those products really are like all-inclusive systems in that they have streaming capability built in, not to mention HDMI, things like that. So like the M33, which I did include, which I guess does include an HDMI now that I think about it. I should have included the name. And the name in terms of functionality is still a really solid pick, and I love the form factor and the design of it. And just like the name, when the Audiolab got here, I didn't want to stop listening to it. The name Unity Atom and the Audiolab 6000A Play have to be among the more listenable Class A/B solid state integrated almost do everything amplifiers I have ever heard. I don't know which one I would pick over the other. Obviously, if I'm shopping and it's my money and I'm on a budget, $1,700 for the Play is infinitely more compelling than $3,200 for the name. But you're not relying on, you can do a lot more with the name fully kitted out. The one thing the name doesn't have that the Play does is that built-in phono preamp. Those of you that are phono turntable, I shouldn't say phono preamp purists, but turntable enthusiasts, you may have your own phono preamp, in which case the name's fine. But if you don't want another device on your rack or next to it, then obviously the Play is a great option. I purposely left it off because I don't know which one I would pick in the end. I love them both. They sound completely different. I don't want to say completely different and someone's going to be like, I have the name and it's exactly. They are different. They're different. I like them for different reasons. And either one of them, if I was like, I'm getting out of this game, I'm calling it a day, throwing in the towel, I would keep both of those for the long term, probably over just about everything else except for my deckware. Those would be my 3 amps. So far in our journey, name Unity Atom, Audiolab 6000A, and my deckware, I'm good. I can walk away. So
cool. Well, I think that's going to make a lot of people happy.
I hope so. I'm sorry.
At least, maybe not happy, but I think it will help answer any lingering questions that they may have after watching the review. I mean, I really like it.
So that's it for us today. That is now our review of the Audiolab 6000A Play. What did you guys think? Let us know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, I have a question of the day for you. What other amplifier do you think stacks up to the Audiolab? Let us know. Maybe you're going to turn me on to something else like Audiolab that I just really didn't have an opinion of. I want to know because you guys help drive a lot of what we do here. So speaking of driving what we do here, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and ring that bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. If you use any of the links that Kristi left for you down below, know that that's a great way that you've continued to show your support for this channel, the work that we do here, as well as support small and sometimes not so small retailers that are dedicated to growing this community the right way. So thank you for doing that. Follow me on Instagram at Recovering Audiophile. And that's it. Like we said, we gotta watch some football, man. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next video. Bye.